My family didn't like me because I was ugly, but now I'm rich and they want me back in the family. Emma grew up in the shadow of her older sister, Sophia, in a household where love was conditional and praise was reserved for only one daughter. From the very beginning, Emma learned that her presence was tolerated, not celebrated. Their parents, enamored with Sophia's beauty and grace, often looked at Emma with thinly veiled disappointment. Sophia was the golden child, the one who had inherited their mother's delicate features and their father's charm. Teachers adored her, neighbors fawned over her, and their parents never missed a chance to showcase her achievements. Emma, on the other hand, was subjected to cruel jokes and constant reminders that she was simply not enough. Her father would chuckle over dinner, shaking his head as he looked at Emma. "You sure you're not meant to be on the football team instead?" he'd say, his voice laced with amusement. "I swear, you could take down a linebacker." The words cut deep, but the worst part was that no one defended her. Her mother would just sigh and tell Emma to sit up straight, as if posture could somehow make her more acceptable. The torment didn't stop at words. When Emma was just 9 years old, her mother became obsessed with making her lose weight. It started with small comments, "Maybe skip the second helping, sweetie," or "Let's watch those carbs, okay?" But soon, it escalated into full-blown dieting. While Sophia indulged in homemade desserts and buttery mashed potatoes, Emma's plate was often filled with plain vegetables and dry chicken breast. If she ever dared to sneak a treat, her mother would snap, "Do you really need that, Emma?" The shame burned hotter than hunger ever could. At school, Sophia reigned supreme. She was the girl everyone admired, the one whose name was whispered with admiration. Emma, meanwhile, learned to blend into the background. Teachers compared them constantly. "Your sister was such a joy to teach," they'd sigh, as if Emma was nothing more than a disappointment in comparison. At home, it was worse. Family gatherings became endurance tests, where relatives would gush over Sophia while Emma sat silently, waiting for someone to acknowledge her. "Look at Sophia, she's going to do great things," an aunt would say. "She's got that natural glow." Then, inevitably, their eyes would drift to Emma, and a forced smile would follow. "And you, well, you're good with computers, right?" It was never a compliment. It was a consolation prize. Emma tried, desperately, to earn their approval. She threw herself into school, working hard to be the best in her class. She excelled in math and science, but no one noticed. When Sophia brought home a B on a test, their parents celebrated as if she'd won an Olympic medal. But when Emma received an A+, the response was indifferent. "Well, of course," her father would say. "You spend all your time on that stuff." By the time she was a teenager, Emma had learned not to expect validation. She had stopped trying to impress her parents, knowing it was a losing battle. Instead, she turned to computers, finding solace in a world where she could control the outcome. Code didn't judge her. Algorithms didn't whisper about how she was the lesser sister. In the digital world, she wasn't the ugly, unwanted girl, she was capable, smart, respected. Meanwhile, Sophia's beauty continued to be her greatest asset. Their mother invested in her, paying for dance classes, professional photo shoots, and even helping her pick out the perfect prom dress. When Emma mentioned she wanted to take a summer coding course, her mother barely looked up from her magazine. "That's expensive," she said dismissively. "Besides, do you really want to waste your summer in front of a computer?" The irony was suffocating. Emma already spent her days locked away in her room, hunched over her laptop. She had no friends, no invitations to parties. Sophia was the one who had the luxury of a social life. Emma had nothing. The rare moments when Emma received recognition were met with either indifference or resentment. When she won first place in a statewide programming competition, she rushed home, hoping, against all logic, that her parents would be proud. Her father barely looked up from his newspaper. "That's nice," he muttered. "But Sophia?" She had scoffed. "Wow, nerd alert," she said, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "You really need to get a life." Their mother had laughed. Emma learned to stop hoping for kindness. She buried herself in her work, teaching herself new programming languages, building small apps in her free time. She spent hours debugging lines of code while Sophia was out at parties, dancing under the glow of fairy lights, kissed by moonlight and adoration. But even in solitude, the insults followed her. One night, at dinner, their mother sighed dramatically. "Emma, honey, have you considered wearing makeup? Maybe doing something with your hair?" Sophia snickered. "Yeah, Mom. But that would require effort." Their father joined in. "Maybe she's just going for that whole, gamer girl look. You know, the ones who never leave their rooms." Laughter echoed through the dining room, and Emma felt the familiar sting crawl up her throat. She wanted to disappear. There was never a single moment of reprieve, no warmth to counter the cold. The house that should have been her sanctuary was instead a constant battlefield, where every interaction reminded her that she was unwanted. And yet, through it all, she endured. Because while they saw nothing in her, she had started to see something in herself. It wasn't beauty. It wasn't approval. It was resilience. Emma learned early on that she was an embarrassment to her family. It wasn't just a feeling, it was a fact. Her parents didn't bother hiding their disappointment. They wore it openly, like an old sweater that had become part of their identity. Every dinner, every conversation, every glance filled with disdain reinforced the truth. Sophia was the daughter they wanted. Emma was the mistake they were stuck with. Her mother, Catherine, was an English teacher at her high school, which meant the humiliation didn't stop at home. It followed Emma through the hallways, seeped into the classroom, and clung to her like a second skin. Catherine never outright insulted Emma in front of the students, that would be too obvious, but she found subtle ways to chip away at her daughter's dignity. "Class, this is what happens when you don't apply yourself," her mother would say, holding up one of Emma's essays. "You end up with work like this, uninspired, sloppy, and riddled with errors." The students would snicker. Someone would whisper something under their breath, and Emma knew it was about her. "Why even let her grade your papers?" a boy had sneered once. "You're not her real daughter, right? She wouldn't trash her own kids' work like that." But she would. And she did. Over and over again. Emma's father wasn't any better. If her mother used her as a classroom example of failure, her father turned her into a joke. When relatives came over, he would laugh about how hopeless she was. "I swear, if we'd had Emma first, we might have stopped at one," he joked one Thanksgiving. Even as the words left his mouth, Emma felt Sophia's smirk from across the table. Their mother had sighed in an almost exasperated way, like Emma's existence was a minor inconvenience. "Don't be cruel, dear," she had murmured, but there was no real warmth in it. No real defense. School was no better. Sophia had set the standard, and Emma had failed to meet it. She was expected to be popular, beautiful, effortless. Instead, she was awkward and forgettable, drifting through the hallways like a ghost. The other students ignored her at best and tormented her at worst. "She's built like a fridge," someone had muttered in gym class once. Another girl had laughed. "Fridges are useful. She's just a waste of space." Emma stopped looking in mirrors after that. She learned to avoid places where people gathered. The cafeteria, the courtyard, anywhere that forced her into social situations. Instead, she took refuge in the one place where she felt safe. The computer lab. It was always empty, except for the occasional nerdy freshman who wandered in by accident. That's where Mr. Rodriguez found her. He was the only teacher who didn't treat Emma like she was invisible. He didn't talk down to her. He didn't compare her to Sophia. One afternoon, he caught her tinkering with an old desktop, fixing a bug in the operating system that the IT department had ignored for weeks. "You know what you're doing," he had said, watching over her shoulder. Emma tensed, waiting for the insult. But it never came. "I could teach you more," he offered instead. "If you're interested." No one had ever seen potential in her before. She nodded. And so, Mr. Rodriguez became the only person in her life who believed she was worth something. He stayed after school to teach her about programming, showing her how to write clean, efficient code. He encouraged her to take on small projects, and when she fixed an issue with the school's grading software, he had smiled at her with something terrifyingly close to pride. "Good work, Emma," he had said. She almost cried. But learning to code didn't change her reality at home. Her parents still dismissed her. Her mother still found ways to degrade her in class. Her father still made his linebacker joke. And Sophia? She just kept winning. One day, Emma overheard her sister talking to a friend in the kitchen. "I don't get why she even tries," Sophia scoffed. "It's so embarrassing. She's never going to be anything." That was the moment Emma decided to stop hoping for their approval. She started working at a computer store in secret. It wasn't much, just a few hours after school, building and fixing computers for customers who barely noticed her. But it was something. She opened a separate bank account, hiding her earnings from her family. Every paycheck, she tucked away the money, saving for a future they didn't believe she could have. She never told them. Because they would have laughed. Because they would have taken it from her. Because she was done letting them decide her worth. Moving to college wasn't just about getting an education for Emma, it was about survival. It was the first step in escaping the house that had suffocated her for 18 years. She wasn't running toward a dream. She was running away from a nightmare. Her parents didn't celebrate when she got accepted. They barely acknowledged it. "Don't pick some useless major," her father had said, flipping through the sports section of the newspaper. Her mother sighed. "Maybe college will teach you how to take care of yourself." You'll have to learn eventually. Sophia had laughed. If she even makes it that far. Emma didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She just packed her bags in silence. The night before she left, her father pulled her aside. Don't go thinking this means you're special, he said. College doesn't change who you are. Emma didn't respond. She had stopped expecting kindness a long time ago. The moment she stepped onto campus, it felt like she could breathe for the first time. No more forced family dinners filled with insult. No more comparisons to Sophia. No more humiliation disguised as parenting. She was finally free. But freedom came with its own challenges. Emma had no financial support from home. Her parents made it clear they weren't going to waste money on her education. She had her small savings from working at the computer store, but it wouldn't last long. She needed a way to make money. She started with what she knew, computers. It didn't take long for her to realize that a lot of students wanted gaming PCs but didn't know how to build them. They spent ridiculous amounts on overpriced pre-built machines when she could assemble something twice as powerful for half the cost. She put up flyers around campus. Custom-built gaming PCs. Cheaper, faster, better. Contact Emma. At first, people were hesitant. She wasn't the typical tech guy they expected. But once word got around that she knew what she was doing, the orders started rolling in. She worked in her tiny dorm room, surrounded by stacks of computer parts. Her fingers were always covered in thermal paste, her desk cluttered with motherboards and cooling fans. She worked late into the night, the hum of power supplies and the click of a mechanical keyboard becoming her new lullaby. She didn't just build PCs. She optimized them, overclocked them, made them run smoother, cooler, and more efficiently than the expensive models people wasted money on. And she didn't just make enough to get by. She made enough to start saving again. But Emma wasn't just a builder. She was a creator. Between work and classes, she spent her free time coding. It was her escape, her way of drowning out the world. She wasn't interested in making flashy games or mindless apps. She wanted to solve problems. And one of the biggest problems in mobile gaming? Physics engines. Most mobile games struggled with realistic physics. Objects didn't move naturally. Collisions felt off. The performance was terrible because existing engines were too bloated for mobile hardware. Emma saw an opportunity. She started developing her own lightweight physics engine, one specifically designed for mobile devices. She spent months refining the calculations, optimizing every single line of code to run as efficiently as possible. She tested it relentlessly, tweaking the algorithms until everything felt just right. And then she released it. She didn't expect much. She uploaded a demo online, showing how her engine handled physics in a way no other mobile software could. She included side-by-side comparisons, highlighting how her code was faster, smoother, and more accurate than anything currently on the market. She went to sleep that night expecting nothing. She woke up to chaos. Her video had gone viral. Developers, gamers, and tech enthusiasts were flooding her inbox. Big names in the gaming industry were sharing her work, praising her innovation. Forums were exploding with discussions about the new physics engine that might change mobile gaming forever. She was getting interview requests, job offers. People wanted to license her technology. And then came the biggest shock of all. A major gaming company, one of the industry giants, reached out with an offer. They didn't just want to license her engine. They wanted to buy it. $2.8 million. Emma sat staring at the email for hours, her brain refusing to process the number. She had spent her whole life being told she was worthless, that she would never amount to anything, that she would always be a failure. And now, here she was. 18 years of humiliation, of insults, of being treated like she didn't matter. And in one moment, all of it shattered. She signed the contract. And just like that, Emma was no longer the unwanted girl in the background. She was someone they couldn't ignore. Emma had spent her whole life being ignored, dismissed, and humiliated. But now, things were different. Her bank account had 7 figures. Her name was in tech news articles. Her inbox was filled with job offers, investment opportunities, and partnerships from people who actually valued her skills. And somehow, as if by magic, her family suddenly remembered she existed. It started with a phone call from her mother, something that had never happened before. Emma almost didn't answer. But curiosity got the best of her. "Emma, sweetheart." Her mother's voice was so sugary that Emma nearly choked on it. "How have you been? We miss you so much." Emma could barely hold back a bitter laugh. "Miss me? Since when?" Before she could respond, her mother continued, her words dripping with forced enthusiasm. "We're so proud of you. We heard all about your success. Everyone's talking about you." That was new. Emma had spent years achieving things, but they had never once been proud of her before. "You should come home for dinner," her mother gushed. "It's been so long. The whole family will be there. Your dad, Sophia, even Jake. We all just want to celebrate you." Emma hesitated. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong. But a small part of her, some desperate, wounded fragment of the little girl who had once longed for their approval, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had changed. So, against her better judgment, she agreed. When Emma arrived at her parents' house, the atmosphere was suffocatingly fake. Her father, the man who had once mocked her for being built like a linebacker, pulled her into a stiff hug. "There she is," he said loudly, his grin just a little too wide. "Our brilliant girl." Her mother clutched her hands, eyes sparkling with forced warmth. "We knew you'd do something amazing, Emma. We always believed in you." Emma felt physically ill. For years, they had done nothing but tear her down. Now, they were acting as if they had raised her to be a success. And then there was Sophia. She stood near the dining table, her perfect smile stretched tight across her face. Her eyes swept over Emma's designer handbag, her expensive watch, things Emma had never owned before. Things Emma had earned by herself. "Look at you," Sophia said, her voice light but laced with something venomous. "You really cleaned up, huh?" Emma didn't respond. She simply sat down and waited for the charade to end. Dinner was an elaborate spread, far nicer than anything her parents had ever bothered to serve before. They talked about her the whole time, asking about her business, her money, her success. It was all so painfully transparent. And then, finally, they got to the point. Her mother sighed dramatically, placing a gentle hand over Emma's. "Sweetheart, we wanted to talk to you about something important. Here it comes." Her father cleared his throat, shifting in his chair. "We're in a bit of a difficult situation." Emma said nothing. She simply waited. Her mother's voice softened into that pleading tone Emma knew all too well. "Jake's business, well, it didn't work out." Emma's eyes flicked to Sophia, whose jaw tensed. Her father continued. "We believed in him. We invested everything in his company. Our retirement savings, our emergency funds." He exhaled heavily. "It's all gone, Emma." Silence. Then Sophia spoke, her voice sharper than before. "We thought we were making a smart investment," she said defensively. "But the economy tanked, and Jake had some bad luck. It wasn't his fault." Emma stared at her sister, feeling nothing but cold detachment. Sophia, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one their parents always bet on, and they had lost. Her mother squeezed her hand tighter. "Emma, sweetheart, we need your help." There it was, the real reason they had invited her here. Not to celebrate her success. Not because they were proud. They wanted her money. Emma set down her fork and leaned back in her chair. "How much?" Her father hesitated. "If you could help us pay off the house and maybe some of the business debts." He trailed off, glancing at Sophia. Sophia straightened. "Look, Emma, it's not like you can't afford it. You made millions off some app or whatever. This is your family we're talking about." Emma let out a slow breath. Her whole life, she had been treated like an embarrassment. Like a failure. Like she was less than Sophia. And now? Now they needed her. She could feel their desperation hanging in the air, thick and suffocating. But she didn't feel pity. She didn't feel guilt. She felt nothing. No. The word sliced through the room like a blade. Her mother blinked. "Sweetheart, we—" "No," Emma repeated, standing up. "You never believed in me. You never supported me. You made me feel worthless for years. And now you want me to fix your mistakes." Her father's face darkened. "Emma, don't be selfish." Emma laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Selfish? You spent my entire childhood tearing me down, and now that you need me, I'm supposed to just hand over my money." Sophia stood up abruptly, slamming her hands on the table. "Oh, get over yourself, Emma. You act like you're some victim, but you wouldn't even have this money if Mom and Dad hadn't sent you to college." Emma cut her off with a sharp glare. "They didn't send me to college. I paid my own way. I worked. I built everything myself. You have no claim to any of it." Sophia's face twisted with anger. "You're such a—" Emma grabbed her purse. "I don't owe you anything." Her mother's voice turned frantic. "Emma, please." She walked to the door. Her father's voice followed her. "You're going to regret this." Emma turned back one last time, her voice eerily calm. "I've regretted wasting years trying to earn your love." Then she left. And for the first time in her life, she didn't look back. The moment Emma walked out of that house, she knew she was done. Done with the manipulation. Done with the humiliation. Done with the family that had never once treated her like she mattered. But they weren't done with her. The messages started almost immediately. At first, they were fake sweet, dripping with forced affection. Mom, sweetheart, we just don't understand why you're being so cold to your own family. We love you. We just need a little help. Dad. Emma, don't be immature. This is what family does. We take care of each other. Sophia. I hope you're happy knowing you're ruining Mom and Dad's lives over some stupid grudge. You're disgusting. Emma ignored them. She had expected this. Then the guilt-tripping escalated. Mom. Emma, I'm begging you. Your father and I are struggling. Do you want to see us homeless? We sacrificed everything for you. Everything? What had they ever sacrificed for her? They hadn't even supported her through college. They had belittled her at every turn, compared her to Sophia, made her feel like an outsider in her own home. Now they wanted to rewrite history? She didn't respond. Sophia, you're a selfish, ungrateful little brat. You have millions and you won't even help the people who raised you? Wow. No wonder you never had any friends. Emma blocked her. Then came the voicemails. Her mother sobbing. Her father ranting about how ungrateful she was. Sophia screaming about how she was a nobody who just got lucky. Block, block, block. She had spent her whole life drowning in their toxicity. She wasn't going to let them poison the life she had built for herself. But they didn't stop. One evening, just as she was winding down from a long day at work, there was a knock on her door. Emma froze. No one ever came to her house unannounced. A sinking feeling settled in her gut as she walked to the peephole. It was her mother. And Sophia. She almost didn't answer. But she knew they wouldn't leave until she did. With a sigh, she unlocked the door. Her mother's eyes were red and puffy, her hands wringing together as if she were truly heartbroken. Sophia, on the other hand, just looked angry. Emma, please, her mother whispered, stepping forward. Can we just talk? Emma crossed her arms. We've already talked. Not like this, her mother said quickly. Face to face. Like a family. A family? Now, they wanted to act like a family? Emma didn't step aside. She didn't invite them in. Sophia scoffed. Oh my God, Emma. Seriously? You can't even pretend to have a heart. Emma's jaw clenched. What do you want? Her mother let out a shuddering breath. We're losing everything, Emma. Your father and I, we put all our savings into Jake's company. The house, our retirement, it's all gone. Emma said nothing. Sophia crossed her arms, her voice sharp with resentment. Jake and I had to sell the mansion. Had to. As if it were some horrific injustice that she was no longer living in luxury. Mom and Dad had to take out loans just to stay afloat, she continued. Do you even care? Emma tilted her head. Did you care when I was 9 and Mom put me on a diet because I wasn't pretty like you? Sophia's mouth pressed into a thin line. Emma turned to her mother. Did you care when you humiliated me in class? When you laughed with Dad while he called me an embarrassment? Her mother's face crumpled. Emma, you needed me to fail, Emma cut in coldly. Because as long as I was the disappointment, Sophia could be your perfect daughter. Sophia let out a bitter laugh. Oh please, you think you're some tragic little victim? You're a nerd who got lucky. Emma met her gaze with cool indifference. No, I worked hard. And you just can't stand the fact that I won. Sophia's face twisted in fury. You don't deserve any of this. Emma exhaled. That's not my problem. Her mother's breath hitched. Emma, please, we're your parents. No, Emma said firmly. You're Sophia's parents. You always were. Her mother flinched like she'd been slapped. Sophia shook her head, disgusted. You'll regret this. Emma stepped back into her house. No, I won't. Then she shut the door in their faces. They knocked. They pleaded. They cursed her name. Emma didn't listen. She had wasted enough years of her life trying to earn their love. She was done. In the months that followed, her family's life unraveled. Sophia and Jake lost everything. Their mansion was sold, their luxury cars repossessed. They went from extravagant vacations and designer clothes to barely scraping by in a rented house. Her parents, once so smug and secure in their golden retirement plans, had to keep working. Her father, once so arrogant, now looked exhausted. Her mother, once so proud, now carried the weight of failure on her shoulders. And Emma? Emma thrived. She took the money she had earned and built something real. She started her own tech company, hiring the kind of people the industry overlooked. People like her, who had been underestimated, ignored, discarded. She developed cutting-edge software, launched new projects, and expanded her reach. She surrounded herself with good people. People who valued her. People who saw her worth. And for the first time in her life, she was happy. Not because she had money. Not because she had success. But because she was finally truly free. Emma had built a life she never could have imagined back when she was a scared, humiliated girl hiding in the school computer lab. Now, she was a name in the tech industry. She had the financial freedom to do whatever she wanted, but more importantly, she had power. The kind of power that came from knowing she had created her own success without anyone's help. She didn't just work in tech, she shaped it. She mentored indie game developers, guiding them through the brutal landscape of game design, helping them break into an industry that often ignored talent in favor of connections. She focused on people like her, the ones who had been overlooked, dismissed, and underestimated. She paid them well. She gave them opportunities she never had. She made sure they knew their worth, because no one had done that for her. And she thrived. She had a small but loyal team, a company that respected her vision, and a steady stream of innovative projects that kept her passionate about her work. Most importantly, she wasn't alone anymore. She met Alex at a game developer conference, an engineer with a sharp mind and an even sharper sense of humor. He wasn't like the men she had grown up around. He didn't belittle her. He didn't try to control her. He respected her. For the first time, Emma experienced what it felt like to be loved without conditions, without comparisons, without the constant weight of feeling like she had to earn her place in someone's life. Alex never asked her about her family. He didn't need to. Emma never spoke about them. But she remembered. She kept the memories. On a hard drive in her office, she had a folder labeled Echoes. Inside were old recordings, voicemails, videos, even a few secretly recorded family dinners where her parents had openly mocked her. She kept them not because they hurt her, but because they didn't control her anymore. Every so often, when doubt crept in, when imposter syndrome whispered that she wasn't really successful, she would listen to them. Her father's dismissive laugh. "You think computers are going to get you anywhere?" Her mother's exasperated sigh. "If you spent half as much time on your appearance as you do on that stupid coding, maybe people would actually like you." Sophia's venomous sneer. "You're never going to be anything more than a pathetic little nerd." And then she would close the folder, and she would smile. Because they had been wrong, and they hated that she had proved them wrong. She had heard through mutual acquaintances that Sophia and Jake were struggling. They were no longer the glamorous power couple Sophia had always pretended they were. The debt had crippled them. Jake had tried and failed to start another business. Sophia had taken a regular job, something she had once mocked others for doing. Their parents were still working, miserable, exhausted, and bitter that Emma hadn't stepped up to save them. And then, somehow, Sophia found her. Not through industry news, not through tech circles, but on Reddit. Emma had made an anonymous post a few months back. A long, brutally honest post about her childhood, her escape, and her rise to success. It had gone viral. Thousands of people had commented, relating to her story, cheering her on. But one comment stood out. "Sophia is perfect. This is a complete lie. You were never treated like this. Stop playing the victim, you pathetic loser. You were always a freak, and money doesn't change that. You're still the ugly little nerd you always were." Emma laughed. The rage in Sophia's words was almost cartoonish. Sophia, who had once been the family star, reduced to trolling her sister on Reddit. The ugly duckling hadn't just turned into a swan. She had become unstoppable.